try. I don't know if it'll be in that order.
Mind talking with your hands a little? Just a little.
Huh? Do what?
Crossing your arms. You just look a little like nervous or something.
Right? I'm gonna grab my balls. Huh?
You grab your balls. You can talk with your hands.
Hey, can somebody come over here and grab my balls? I want somebody to grab my balls.
Story in the family is my father would go to yeshiva, which is a Jewish religious school, during the day, and go to the Bowery at night and tattoo. I'm Marvin Moskowitz. My grandfather was Willie Moskowitz, who tattooed on the Bowery from the 30s to the 50s. My father is Walter Moskowitz, who tattooed from the 50s till he passed away in '07. My uncle is Bowery Stan Moskowitz, who tattooed from the late 40s and is still going strong, tattooing the whole day's schedule. And my other uncle, their brother-in-law, was Stanley Farber, also known as Flatbush Stan, who tattooed from the late 40s to the late 60s, early 70s. Why I got into the tattooing? Well, because they would tattoo. It's like if your father was a blacksmith, you became a blacksmith. If your father dug ditches for graves, you were a grave digger. To me, it was strictly a way to earn money, I had a wife, I had a baby, and before that, to go out on Friday, Saturday night and fuck around. I would go during high school and junior high on Saturdays with my father, and I learned to make needles, mix the ink. You know, later years they had the supply business, so I would mix the ink, make all the needles, and put machines together and stuff. That's how they apprenticed me. There was no apprentice. When I hit about 17, 18, they gave me two out-of-tune Josie machines that were sparking a mile long with thin little tubes with no grips. Set me up a table in back of the room, and you're a tattooer. And I had some friends, and they got me some drunks or junkies to practice on. And that's how I learned. But I didn't pick it up fast enough. They weren't that great teachers. So they sent me to Tony Polito in Brooklyn, who is considered the king of Brooklyn tattoo artists. He was very close with my family. And he showed me a lot. But it seemed for every hour or two he showed me, we ate about an hour or two of Chinese food. My brother's a doctor. My other brother is a big shot on Wall Street banks. My sister's a housewife but educated. Me, I went through the front door, out the back door in school. I hated school from the first day of nursery school to the last day of high school. But I always felt my father needed me. So a lot of my businesses, they went into a lot of businesses for me. They were from the mindset, because they were thrown out of the city in the 1963 band. They were part of the guys that you could wake up and be out of business tomorrow. So that was always in back of their head. So they always insisted, my uncle, my father, that I did something else.
You know, you get a bike and you put your soul into it. A lot of these guys, they do put their soul into it, but not hands-on. You know, and the ones that do, I actually get along with them. We can relate, because they know that time is money. And there's some people don't have the time. And I can understand that, because it's hard to, time never counted back in the 60s and 70s. Nobody paid attention to time. Oh, I'll do this for $10. Might take you 5 hours to do it. But now, you can't spend, if you take 5 hours to do something, you can't say, give me $10. You gotta say, give me what the time is worth. It went from $10 to $1,000. It can work that way. You know, it can come up, and a lot of people don't understand that. So the guys now that are into their bikes, that are setting it up, what they're doing is they're bypassing the middleman and doing it themselves, which was the way I always liked that. But the guys who buy the new bikes, they don't really, they buy the bolt-on parts. They don't really set the bikes up. They set the handlebars up a certain way and they're fixed. And I never could see anything with that because they're high and they look cool, but they can't adjust it to their feel. They can go look like everybody else's bike, but they don't. If you really paid attention to riding, you'd start changing the handlebars. You start doing certain things to the bike, you know, and you just don't get that. They'll put ape hangers on. I see that on baggers. And to me, it actually, done right, it looks good, but it's got to be done right. If you just bolt them on, they don't have that feel. Now you're being like the next guy. But to me, you know, if you cut down the fairings and you do certain things to it, what you're doing is you're making it not as practical as it was, because choppers aren't practical.
Back then, with all the old timers back then, it was always a bucket of blood. You had more fights than people you tattooed. There's a famous story how they had a big Donnybrook on the Bowery. They busted the guys up. There was blood all over a couple of big giant design sheets that Dracula actually drew. And they took it to Long Island, and blood and all, and hung it back up when they opened the shop on Long Island. It's just, and all the old timers will tell you, it was for every 10 tattoos you did, there were 2 or 3 fights. My father and uncle ran the numbers for a while on the Bowery, and they were doing very good. What put them out of business, they were friends with the beat cop. You had beat cops out down. Leo O'Haig, I think his name was. My father and uncle once helped him move. He was moving to Long Island. Now this guy was just a beat cop. He was moving into a mansion on Long Island. Elizabeth Street Station. Now Elizabeth Street Station, there was a waiting list of cops to get in it. That's how crooked and profitable it was. And it turned out this cop that they knew, O'Haig's father, was the captain of the precinct. So when he found out they were running numbers, he put them out of business because he was insulted they didn't ask him in as a partner. Yeah, you didn't have none of these infinity signs with give me the Pledge of Allegiance on this side and the opening preamble of the Constitution on this side. You didn't have it. It was all eagles. My father said when the Black Panthers came out, that's all they did. Black Panthers. That's all you did. You would do an eagle, the same eagle, 10 times a day. Now, my father and uncle, they were partners their whole life until my father got sick. They would. I remember on Long Island, I would count sometimes when I was there. They'd do 30 guys each a day. So, you know what? Remember I talked before how the artwork from the war, from the Second World War to maybe the 70s, disappeared? Tony Polito by himself would do 30, 40 guys a day. You didn't have time. You asked me why that was. You didn't have time to sit with a guy all day. Another reason was you didn't sit with a guy for an hour. My uncle would do an eagle on the chest in an hour with a 6 flat and a 5 round.
Tommy Granger's a bad motherfucker.
Bikers then and now. So you think it's easier for us now?
Easier now because all the cops ride, everybody rides. I never get pulled over anymore, very rarely, you know.
And all our bikes just push buttons, go. Back then you had a fight to get your bike to run every day.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And they, you know, it's just like, it was, you know, different. Everybody had kick starts. Nobody had electric starts back then. It was like, yeah, it was funny, man. Like, leave the bars, everybody's like kangaroos jumping up and down, you know. And your bike wouldn't start, and everybody's got to, you know, tell you what to do. Did you choke it? I'll choke you. Get the fuck away from me, you know. People trying to tell you how to start your own motorcycle, right, Jimmy? I think you're flooding it. Hey, get the fuck out of here, will you, man? You're all like hot from jumping on the bike, and you're embarrassed because everybody's standing around.
Well, yeah, man,
and your bike won't start.
Once people start staring at you, your bike doesn't.
It's it. That's it. They got their own
Tell
little.
everybody to turn
They got
around.
their own soul, you know. It's like.
Yeah, right. Yep.
That's Charlie Wagner, who's considered by many the godfather of New York American tattooing. And this cowboy is the only, and this is the guy that put my grandfather in business. This cowboy is the only tattoo my father ever had with my name and the brother that came after me under it. And it's just coincidence that that tattoo would be the closest to the guy that put the family into the tattoo business. My grandfather was Willie Moskowitz. He came here in 1920 or 21, and he became a barber. And he had his own barber shop, and he always rented a little back room, a 2x0, to transient tattooers. One of the guys was Al Neville's. Al Neville's is the guy that the Norman Rockwell that did the Saturday Evening Post. Well, Al Neville's is the one that lent him the tattoo machine for reference for that painting he did of the sailor getting tattooed. And Charlie Wagner, who's to some is considered the dean of New York tattooing, American tattooing, whatever, was his friend at a shop up the block. And these transient tattooers, some of them were drunk, some of them showed up, didn't show up. So one day Charlie was in my grandfather's barber shop. I think it was Al Neville's was the last guy, but don't hold me to that. Whoever it was, wasn't there. And Wagner says, Willie, I'm going to teach you to tattoo. You're getting 25 cents a haircut. You'll get 50 cents for a tattoo. And literally, overnight, my grandfather was a barber on a Friday. He was tattooing Saturday. And there's stories how, in those early days, you'd be in the middle of a shave. Guy would come in for a tattoo, so he put the hot towel over the guy, do the tattoo, come back, forget he only shaved half the guy, and send the guy on his way.
When I first started tattooing, tattooing was still somewhat underground. Even though it was out in the public and everybody had tattoo shops, it was very hard to get into. You had to get tattooed by a certain tattoo artist. You had to get in with that person in order to teach them. Everybody hid everything from you. You know, it was very hard to get into the tattoo business. I had to work hard just to get into it. You'd have to ask tattoo artists to give you a chance, to give you a break. Whereas today, you just basically walk into a tattoo shop and say, hey, I want to be a tattoo artist, and they let you become a tattoo artist.
I moved to Baldwin after that a few years later, my own shop, which was, you know, a couple of towns up the road on Grand Avenue in between the Southern State and the Sunrise Highway. And I had my friend Tony Lucas, who started tattooing in the 60s in Mathbeth, Queens, in his house. And he's well known in the business. And just a funny story is, and this guy's about 6 foot, also 5, big, beautiful head of hair, but he shaves it because he has a Fu Manchu face tattooed on there. But we get these 2 college girls coming. They want their names, you know, above their thing over there. And next thing we know, they're completely naked. So we do the tattoo, and they're making small talk. Long story short, we let them go. As soon as the door shuts, my friend Tony looks at me and says, Marvin, did we really let them leave? Did this really happen? We let them leave? And I told my father the story. He says, you guys are lightweights. They would have never got out of here with me and my brother.
Pete, go back to L.A.